This is Inside Town Hall, a behind-the-scenes look at city government and the issues affecting you and your family.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields. Coming up on the program, we'll visit with City Councilor Rex Rolfing. He talks about his last 8 years on the City Council. We'll be back in just a moment.
The Midco Aquatic Center is hiring part-time lifeguard positions, work while going to school, flexible schedules, and bonus opportunities available. No certification needed to apply. Find out more information at midcoaquaticcenter.org/employment.
South Dakota may be one step closer to having a state cemetery for veterans, and here to tell us all about that is City Councilor Rex Rolfing. Thanks for joining us for Inside Town Hall. Let's talk about this state veterans cemetery.
Well, it's a cemetery that we feel, or I feel, many of us feel, has been needed for a long time. When a veteran dies, their family has a choice, has the automatic choice to be buried in a veteran cemetery. The closest veteran cemetery is at Fort Schnell in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, or out in Sturgis. That entails an awful lot of costs to be able to go out there, have the body brought out there, and all the family and everything like that brought out there. There's in the veterans in South Dakota, there's 72,000, I think, 72,000 of those veterans. Over 50,000 of those live in East River, South Dakota. That's a long drive for someone in Brookings or Sisseton or something like that to have their loved ones buried that far away. Secondly, there's over 50,000 of them, of these 70,000 that live within 75 miles of Sioux Falls. So it is a logical and ideal location to have a cemetery like this made or developed here in Sioux Falls area, so that families can come visit afterwards, visit their loved ones, and also not incur such a cost.
How is it that you are a city councilor? How did you get involved with this process?
You know, I don't remember, but I think I think some of the Ken Tellusen or Terry Paulson contacted me or something, and it's something that I immediately became interested in because of my son not being buried in a veteran cemetery, but being buried here. We really didn't think of an option along that way, and I know that would have been probably his choice had there been something closer, and maybe would have been our choice too to have done that. And so when this happened, I got on board with it, and we got some people together. I tend to push projects as hard as I can and try to get them done. I'm one of those kind of people that like to see fruition, plans come to fruition. And what a great thing that's happening here in the state of South Dakota with this bill, Senate Bill 91, being voted on the Senate side unanimously. And what many people don't realize is that when the Senate got done with their vote, there were many veterans around the balcony of the Senate chambers, and the senators got up and gave them a standing ovation when they passed the bill. Very, very, you just don't hear of that happening where they do that, especially on an appropriations bill. And just yesterday, Monday, March 4th, the House also passed the bill unanimously. And so it's going on to the governor's desk, and we fully hope and pray that the governor will sign the bill into law, so that the $600,000 that is needed by the state of South Dakota to develop this property will be appropriated, and we can go ahead with the appropriations.
It had to go to the legislature because it was not that anybody disputed that they wanted a state veterans cemetery. It was the funding for the state veterans cemetery. Explain that a little bit, okay. What the process was.
Well, this ended up, I always said, this ended up being kind of a chicken or the egg situation. And what happened was they came to us and says, we need to have some land. Can you find us some land? And so with the help of many of the directors here in town, Mark Cotter, Mike Cooper, and the mayor, we found a piece of property up northeast of Sioux Falls that the city owns that should work out very nicely for the cemetery. Then the city of Sioux Falls, the councilors, I contacted all the councilors and found out what their interests were in this project, and we had unanimous support from them also. So we put together a resolution indicating our intent to gift that property of around 50 acres to the state of South Dakota for the purpose of a state veteran cemetery. Once that happened, we had passed that. That went then, Tellinghusen and Paulson and those guys and all the veterans went up to the state and had Senate Bill 91 developed. Senate Bill 91, in essence, says the state of South Dakota will appropriate $600,000 to be used for the planning and development of a state veteran cemetery, assuming that Sioux Falls gives the land. So you see, we have both bills that are a resolution and a bill that says if the other parties come through with their side, what they promised, then it'll go forward. So we're at that point right now. The $600,000 will be used for architects, for I'm sure land site develop, whatever it takes to say this piece of property will work very nicely for a cemetery, and we will go forward with that piece of property and and the purpose of that. Once the plan comes back from the VA and says yes, everything will work, then the city of Sioux Falls, the councilors that will be around at that time, should happen sometime late summer, early fall, that they will then do an ordinance that officially gives the land to the state of South Dakota. And then the VA before that will have said, yes, Sioux Falls has the right to do this, or not Sioux Falls, the state of South Dakota has the right to do it. We are going to give you, or we are going to pay for the development of that cemetery, plus return the $600,000 that the state of South Dakota appropriated in the first place. So the state of South Dakota will be out no money on this. The only possible not catch, but possible expense that they may have is if operating expenses exceed income in certain years. But we do not feel that will happen.
Where will the employees of that cemetery, because you obviously would have to have somebody to maintain it and to work on it, who will they work for? Are they state employees?
They will be state employees, right. And part of the development will be not only an office type or a building that will have a chapel and that kind of thing in it. It'll also have a groundskeeping barn, if you will, a garage, and probably a columbarium. More than likely a columbarium will be part of that also. I don't know if you're aware of this. I was talking to a funeral director the other day that said that approximately 60% of people in Sioux Falls now are being cremated. Which is really huge. I did not realize it was that big. But so the columbarium will be something that's very important also.
Sure. Who can be buried in this cemetery?
Very good question. Any veteran, their spouse, and their minor or disabled, shall I say, children, dependent children, disabled dependent children can be buried there. Very interesting the way they do that, but once this is set up, what they literally do is come in and bury the vaults ahead of time. So the nice straight lines that you see at veteran cemeteries and things, those are all architectural and engineered into the plan in the first place. And then all they do, they put the burial or the vault about 8 to 9 inches below the surface of the ground, and then they just dig the dirt off of that and then bury the casket and then put the cover back on, and it's only about 8-9 inches below ground.
And the VA is authorized to give $749 for state expenses. Would that still be incurred here, or is it free for the family? How does this work?
It's free for the family, and that's what is paid by the government to the cemetery itself then, or to the state of South Dakota. We feel with the number of burials that would will happen out there. And I'm looking for my notes here, but I think it was somewhere around 250 burials they're planning on per year. Well, if you multiply that out, that should be adequate income to run a cemetery of this size. Remembering that they have no cost for paying for the land, they have no cost in paying for the development of the cemetery itself. So basically, it's operations costs only. There would be one or two groundskeepers and maybe some summer help, and then one administrator who they're thinking about. We're thinking about sharing that job with someone else, and so it'll be fairly inexpensive to run.
And South Dakota is one of only 5 states that does not have a state cemetery for veterans.
And one of the things, that's exactly correct, and one of the things that we found out is that Minnesota already has 1 or 2, and they're planning another one. And that would encroach, if I could say, where they're planning on putting that would encroach on the market area of Sioux Falls, which might say to the VA authority that we don't need one here because we've got one 90 miles away, and or that kind of thing. And so we think it's very, very important that we have one here so that people in the Sioux Falls area, with all the veterans in this area, that they can, go up, have the opportunity to be buried there, number one. Number two, have it close to their family so that they can go visit. It's very important.
Do you think most veterans would choose not to be buried in a veteran cemetery because of the distance, or most families they want them closer to where they live? So, if Minneapolis is the closest one right now, that's a hardship for many families that live in eastern South Dakota.
I've even heard of one person who said the veteran's spouse was not in good enough shape to make the trip to Rapid City. So she's never seen where her husband is buried and where his final resting place is, and probably never will. But if it was 5 miles or a mile or 2 outside of Sioux Falls, she'd be up there more often than not.
Sure.
I mean, and what a beautiful ability, what a beautiful thing to be able to offer that to a widow and to families to go visit. I would sure miss it if I couldn't go visit Rob's burial site. And I think many, many veterans would feel the same way.
Do you think they'll have ceremonies there? Will this be a gathering place, maybe on Memorial Day or for other?
Oh, no question about it. No question about it.
National holidays.
Yes, national holidays. This would be a big gathering spot for people. I could see ceremonies going on up there, very much so, yeah.
And so what is next for this? The only thing is for the governor to sign it?
The next step is for the governor to sign it. Once the governor signs it, the appropriation, it was done on an emergency basis, which means the money becomes available immediately. And so we can then go, the application will be made directly to the VA Center or VA administration. They have a subcommittee for cemeteries, and we will then wait for them to get the people involved. That's what the $600,000 is for. Again, they will then use some of that $600,000 to designate and to look at the land, make sure that it's appropriate and will sustain a cemetery, that it's large enough, et cetera, et cetera. And once that is done, they will come back and say, all is well. All the engineering, architectural drawings, et cetera, are done. This is what we want it to look like. And then they will say, we're going to go with it. And we've been pretty well promised that we're very, very high on the list, if not number one, for the cemetery in 2018. Okay. So we're in good shape.
According to the notes, it says 12 to 18 months for construction.
Building. Yeah, yep. It's a big, $6 million project. It's not a small project. And so it's going to take a year to build it, and we have a beautiful piece of land. I'm praying. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, but a beautiful piece of land up northeast of Sioux Falls. It was part of the old Slip-Up Creek property. I don't know if you've been around long enough to remember that.
Sure.
Before we got hooked up to the Lewis and Clark water system, we were looking for a way to store water for our next water source. And we had decided to, at that time, buy some land up there in the Slip-Up Creek around the valley so that we could form a lake, a reservoir. And this is part of that land that was purchased. that eventually was decided that it would not work anyway. And so it's some farmland and some beautiful rolling hills down into the valley that will just give a magnificent site for a cemetery.
Okay, well, and I don't think this is going to be the last we're going to hear about it.
I'm sure not. I sure hope not.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break. And it's Rex's, Councilor Rolfing's last bit on the City Council. So we're going to talk about that when we come back, and we're going to ask for your advice for other people who might want to run for City Council. So we'll be back in just a moment.
My hero is my neighbor because she rakes the lawn for me when I can't.
She's always there whenever anyone needs a helping hand.
My teacher is my hero because she always makes time for everyone.
Well, welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we are visiting with City Councilor Rex Rolfing, who we're going to wrap up. This is going to be your last time on Inside Town Hall.
I'm sure your listeners or our listeners out there will be very happy.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. You have already served 2 4-year terms on the City Council, 8 years. First off, let's go back a little bit. What made you run for City Council?
Boy, you're going way back.
We're going way
for
back.
an old guy, a memory like that, it's kind of hard. But
2010.
2010, but you're not as old as I am. Yes, I can remember back that far. And I really thought that it was time for me to get back to Sioux Falls. I've lived here since 1973 and half of my life before that. I'm a graduate of Rapid City High School, but went to grade school here, went to junior high school here, did a lot of things here in Sioux Falls. My parents moved back and forth, and I've always loved Sioux Falls. This is such a great community, and in the traveling that I had done, the more people travel and get to other cities, the more they realize what a good thing we've got going in Sioux Falls. And so I said, I really want to see this town progress and do some things that need to be done, in my opinion, and others' opinion has been proven. And so I said, okay, now's the time to do it. I had an employer at that time who was willing to let me do that. And so I went ahead and threw my hat in the ring and was lucky enough to be elected the first time, and then ran again the second time and was elected also. So it's been gratifying. It really has been to know that people trust you with their vote, because that's what people are doing, is trusting you with their vote to know what's going on and all the details that go behind a decision, and sometimes to make those really tough votes that aren't real popular, but they're the right thing to do.
Sure, and that's one of my other questions is, what is your greatest accomplishment? What have you seen over the last 8 years that you're very proud of that happened in the city of Sioux Falls?
Oh, there's a lot. I made a list here of so many things. It's been really wonderful. You know, number one on the list is the Denny Sanford Premier Center. What a great facility. And there were people who didn't want to have that, or they wanted to have it downtown. Well, I think in the long run we picked the right spot, and we did a wonderful job on putting it up. Regardless of what people think about the siting, you know, that's just something that comes along. And but it's a great facility. The Midco Aquatic Center. Think about that. How many? We should have had one. 12 years ago at Drake Springs. A small group of people got together and said we don't want it, and got a few other people to say no, and put it down. Now we have an undersized outdoor pool that's used about 60 days of the year. Quite frankly, the Midco should have been the second one that was put up, but thank gosh we have it now. That was one of those things where people were saying, oh, you're going to go out and borrow money again and do all this kind of stuff. It really worked out well, and I saw the financing on this, and I had thought about this myself and presented it, that we had appropriated about $7 million in 1 year, and we came with that check from the ice storm of about $7 million. I believe it was from the ice storm. It was either that or the flooding money that we had upfronted. And I said, you know, If we budget another $70 million in the next year, we've got $21 million. That's what it's going to take to build that thing. So we didn't have to borrow a nickel to do the Midco Aquatic Center. And look at how successful that's been. I know my grandson, my little 2-year-old, was to keep him busy when the other 2 boys are in school. His mother took him over there the other day, and he just loves it. And there's always room for people over there, regardless of what else is going on. So there's swim meet, the rest of it's open and that kind of thing. If there's walking in the pool, then there's still other pools that are available for general public to get in there. So it's a great thing. The new administration building, probably one of the most contentious things that we've done, but it was apparent to me in 2010 that we were going to have to do something. And in fact, I sent an email when we were having all the trouble with the park down there. I sent an email to the mayor saying, "Why don't we just shut the park down and build a new city hall there?" And he wrote back to me and he said, "You're not far from the tree, Rex. Stay tuned." They had already been thinking about it at that point. It's been thought about that we need something for back in the Munson era. And yes, we went through some hoops to get the thing done, but I think I know it's going to be a good thing for people and see what's going to increase the customer service for parking fines, for water bills, for electric bills, and zoning and planning and zoning and all those kind of things. So it's really going to be a good thing.
Does that include the county as well? Is that the city county or city building?
Just the city building. Okay. It's just a city building. We've got unprecedented growth in the city. You know, we move a city of Harrisburg to Sioux Falls about every year. Think about that. Yes. Think about that.
We're growing by leaps and bounds.
We're growing by leaps and bounds, that's right. Right after I was elected, we had that wastewater sewage explosion, if you will, up north by the penitentiary, which could have been a huge disaster had we not been on it. The employees of Sioux Falls get on it right away. And we at that time told Mark Cotter, "What's it going to take to fix this, Mark? We've got to get this fixed. Tell us what it is." And we immediately allocated the money over a 2 or 3 or 4 year period, and it's now fixed, and we should not have that kind of problem again. I mean, things that are behind the scenes, that's not glamorous, obviously, but it sure is important. Sure is important. Railroad relocation. What a huge boon to downtown that's going to be once we get, and the development of Sioux Falls downtown has just been amazing.
Do you see over the last 8 years, as you're looking at all of these different projects, these are huge projects, do you see the next 8 years bringing as many large-scale projects as what we've seen in the last 8 years?
Why not? I hope they're not big sewer bills, or that kind of thing, but we have planned out through 2025 and beyond what is needed for the city of Sioux Falls with the growth that they're having. That's something that a lot of people in the citizens of Sioux Falls do not realize. We cannot build things like contractors build them for the most part, or that your house is built. We've got to build a building that'll last 100 years. Most buildings are built to last 20, 30 years. Some commercial buildings, 50 years. We, because we're the city, and because people expect it to be quality and last, we've got to build them differently. And there are certain things that we have to do to buildings and to other projects that the general contractor, people have no idea that that's the way it has to be. And so that's one of the reasons it costs so much. It's one of the things I've learned here is that we've got to do things different with the projects that we do so that they last, and it costs more.
What surprised you the most being on the city council after you were elected?
The collaboration that I think happens, and that there was more politics in a lot of situations than I thought there should have been. I'm a very non-political person. I just am. I came in here telling people that I was going to vote for what I thought, with the information that I had, was right for the people of Sioux Falls and for the city of Sioux Falls. And hopefully that's what I've done. At least that's what I tried to do all the way along. When you have people that are very good at collaborating and getting other people to think along their way and why, and to work with them and to say, how are we going to get this done? And convincing them that this is an important thing. And when that happens, it's really a beautiful thing for the city of Sioux Falls. It really is.
All right. And what do you see, I guess, as some of the challenges that are the city and your other city council friends are going to be facing maybe the next 5 years? What's on the
Depends on who gets elected. I see some situations where people are they need to run everything by their constituency, what they call their constituency, or the public. Like they can't vote on their own, knowing having the information they have. Generally we have information that the general public doesn't have about a project, and to have to take that to the public through the media or all kinds of. And I'm not against public input, but having that last so doggone long sometimes doesn't make sense to me, and maybe that's just me in the get done attitude. But it seems to me we've been elected to do what we're supposed to do, and that is to vote and do what's the right thing for Sioux Falls. And to also always have a small minority of people telling us or giving us advice, which is, I can't have the whole people at Sioux Falls telling me what to do. I answer every email that I get from constituents, but in the long run, I have to make the decision up with the information that we've been given, and we get more information than the general public does. And sometimes it looks like I'm voting against something when in fact, with the information that I have and they don't, I would vote the way they do. And so it's frustrating sometimes when people don't collaborate and try and get people together. And so I say, buck up and let's make things better for Sioux Falls with the information that we've got.
And moving forward, what's your advice for somebody who's going to run for city council?
Do the collaboration. Run for the right reasons, and do the collaboration. If you got something you want to put forward, don't just put it forward. Run it by everyone. And if you don't have the votes for it, then don't make a big splash out of it. Just suck it up and do it differently. Let me give you an example. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the fallback provision that was rescinded. In Sioux Falls, before we rescinded the fallback provision, if Madeline Shields was an assistant director of a department and that department director became available, you could be appointed to that position and if you didn't work out for some reason or another. Now remember, directors are the 12 people who really run the city of Sioux Falls. They are top management. They have They have a lot of individual power, let's put it that way, to run their departments. If you had done that and you hadn't worked out, you got to fall back to your old position. And we got a new boss who you used to be, now he's how's that gonna work? And I said, that doesn't feel right. Well, when I put that out in about 2012, wasn't gonna fly. So I backed off on it, waited a couple, 3 years. Now it's ordinance. Now it's policy of Sioux Falls that a person who moves up the ranks and gets into the position of director who came from within the ranks of Sioux Falls will not be able to fall back into that position. It was always my thinking that if that person doesn't have enough trust in their own skills and skill sets, et cetera, to run that department, they shouldn't have applied for it in the first place. That's one of the things that, the other one that is really important is the pension reform that we did, moving people that were hired after, I think it was 2015 or something, into the state employment or state retirement system. Retirement program is still very, very, very good. But we aren't on the hook for it in the city of Sioux Falls, and it saved us $350 million long term.
And you're not off the clock yet. You have a little bit of time left.
Yes, I have 63 days.
63 days. So if you want any advice from Councilor Rolfing, you can get a hold of him at siouxfalls.org. Thank you for joining us for Inside Town Hall, and good luck in your future endeavors, and thank you for your service.
And thank you, Sioux Falls.
All right. And thanks for watching Inside Town Hall. We'll be back next month.